What's up guys, welcome to the Chess Giant. This is Solomon Riddell, and in today's video we're going to be unpacking the Chess Geek's mystery box. Who on earth is the Chess Geek and what is a mystery box? Well, the Chess Geek is a young chess YouTuber that's been coming out with some amazing content. I really like his chess opening videos and his chess opening trap videos. I'll leave the link to his YouTube channel in the description below. Make sure to click on that and show him some love. And what on earth is a mystery box? Well, the Chess Geek actually made this idea up, and it's when you send someone your favorite puzzle, your favorite game, and your favorite chess opening trap. And we're going to go over all three in this video. Let's start off with this puzzle, and here we're playing as white. We're playing from the white perspective with a pawn on b5 that eventually wants to promote on b8. I'm going to let you guys pause the video and see what you would do if you were white in this position. The obvious idea is playing something like king takes c7. I mean, just taking the knight off the board. But this is actually a huge mistake because now we have stalemate. The pawn on b6 can't move because of the pawn on b5, and this king on a7 literally cannot move. It can't go to a8 or b7 because of the rook. It can't take the rook because our king defends it, and obviously you cannot take a piece of your own color, and this king can't go to a6 because of our pawn on b5. So as tempting as taking that knight is, it's simply not the best option. The move here for white that wins the game is Rook A8 Check. Absolutely amazing idea. Here the idea is that if the king takes, we can simply play king takes c7, and if king b7, we could bring our rook to a7 and then take the knight on c7 anyways, and if knight takes a8, we then have king c8, and now, again, this king on a7 cannot move. It can't come to a6, b6, b7, or b8. So the only legal move for black is to give the knight right back. So no matter what black plays, we're going to reach this position, and now black is forced to lose protection of the pawn on b6 as the king has to move away to a8, as we can now take on b6, play king a6, and just start marching our pawn up the board. Here white has officially won the game. We're going to queen here and checkmate the opponent's king in this very easy endgame. Let's move on to the Chess Geek's favorite game, which was played by none other than Wilhelm Steinitz back in the year of 1895. And here Steinitz began the game with e4, and after e5 played knight f3, developing the knight, attacking the pawn on e5. And after knight c6, went with bishop c4, the Italian game. And following bishop c5, opted for the Gyoko piano main line with c3, looking to prepare a d4 push. And here we see the main line with knight f6, and following d4, black trades on d4. We see an exchange here right in the center of the action, and now bishop b4 equals check. Now against bishop b4, my recommendation for white is bishop d2. Idea being, after a move like bishop takes d2 and knight takes d2, we have a very strong center. We're planning on playing moves like e5 and d5 in this game, making the knights go backwards, and we enjoy a huge space advantage. So the best move for black is to disrupt the strong center we have and play a move like d5, in which we're simply going to take that pawn and then play queen b3, forming a battery ram on the a2 g8 diagonal. Now we have two attackers on that knight on d5, and if the knight moves, the pawn on f7 falls. So the best move here for black is knight ce7, in which we're going to castle kingside, bring our rooks to e1 and c1, bring our knight to say e4, and after that we'll have knights eyeing c5 and e5. I really like white's game here. However, when Steinitz played, chess opening theory had not developed to where it is today, and he didn't play bishop d2, but instead went with knight c3. And now the best move for black is knight takes e4, grabbing the knight right in the center of the board and putting more pressure on that pinned knight on c3. But instead, black played the move d5, breaking through in the center, and now we see e takes d5, and after knight takes d5, castling kingside. Now when I first went over this game that the Chess Geek sent me, I was wondering how on earth did black not take the knight on c3. Now black played bishop e6, which is the best move, but why didn't black just take the knight on c3? I mean, it just looks like a free pawn because we take the knight, and after bishop takes c3, black's now up a pawn and attacking our rook on a1. But now white has queen b3, a killer idea. Now our bishop and queen both putting pressure on that f7 pawn, as well as attacking the bishop on c3. And if black defends the f7 pawn, we simply take the bishop and we're up a piece for a pawn. So that's not a good idea for black. And if black decides to gobble up the rook, we can then play bishop takes f7 with check. And after king f8, we now have bishop to a3 check. Amazing attack here. The queen and the bishop, just pouncing down on the opponent's king. And the only move here really is knight e7, in which we can simply take that bishop off the board, swing the rook back to e1, and now we have a rook and bishop both putting pressure on that knight on e7. We could either take that knight immediately, or even the next move, double up with a move like queen to e3, knight g5. White is going to win this game very quickly. So needless to say, black was pretty smart to not take that knight, as tempting as it was, and instead we see bishop e6 simply trying to defend the center position on d5. And now from Steinitz we see bishop g5 activating the bishop, pouncing down on the opponent's queen. And after bishop e7 we now see a long series of exchanges. Here Steinitz takes the knight on d5, snatches the bishop, and yet again snatches the other bishop. And after knight takes e7 goes with rook e1. This may seem like a somewhat even position, but here white has a huge edge. It's not really easy for black to castle now. If black castles kingside, we take the knight, and if black castles queenside, we take the knight. So here we see the move f6, first off just trying to create some space for the king, and on top of that protect the e5 and g5 squares from the knight on f3. But we now see queen e2, Steinitz looking to threaten checkmate in one move, the rook and the queen both ganging up on that knight, somewhat forcing a move like queen d7, in which Steinitz then played rook ac1. Just look at the activity of white's pieces here. And now we see c6, simply trying to hold this game together. The c6 pawn and the f6 pawn holding on to these center squares here. And again, look at the activity of white's pieces. I think in chess, guys, every single move we make, we have to slowly improve the positioning of our pieces. Sometimes there's simply no way to checkmate your opponent's king in 2 or 3 moves. And if you can't do that, you have to improve your position. But if you look at white's pieces, most of them look pretty good. This rook on c1 is very active on the c-file. Both the queen and the rook are pouncing down on that e7 knight, preventing the king from castling. The only real piece here that's not really doing much is our knight on f3. It can't go to e5 because the pawn can't go to g5. The knight on f3 isn't bad, but it would be a lot better on e6. So here Steinitz plays d5, simply giving up a pawn. The queen can't take it because of checkmate in 1. So after c takes d5, we now see knight d4, giving up a pawn, but in return, throwing our knight into the e6 square. We're now threatening rook c7, attacking the queen and putting more pressure on the knight on e7. So we now see rook hc8 from black. And now again, another threat, queen g4, threatening queen takes g7. So black opted for g6, and now an amazing move from Steinitz. Honestly, the rest of this game is simply amazing, but the craziness all starts with knight g5 check. I love this move. Idea being, if black takes the knight, that's okay. We're going to take the queen on d7. So king e8 was played, looking to defend the queen, but now rook takes e7 from white. Wow. The whole idea here is that if queen takes e7, we simply take the rook on c8, and we're going to be up a ton of material in this endgame, a full piece, in fact. And if the move king takes e7, we now have rook e1 check. Now, black has a couple of different options here. Obviously, if king f8, we simply win the queen, but black could also move to either d6 or d8. Let's first go over king d8. What would black do here after knight e6 check? Well, black would be forced to go right back to a square like e8 or e7, in which we will continue with knight c5, attacking the king and doubling up on the queen on d7. And after king f8, we'll just take that queen off the board, and here white has a completely won position. The other option, besides king d8, is king to d6, in which case we're now going to play queen b4, swinging our queen over, and now there's only really a couple moves here for black. If black plays rook c5, we'll continue with rook to e6 check, and we're going to be up a ton of material yet again. And if king c7, we now have knight e6 check, forcing the king back into b8. If c6, we have queen c5 checkmate, game over. So after king b8, we now play queen to f4 with check, and following rook c7, take that rook off the board. Here white has practically won the game. So oddly enough, black couldn't really take the rook on e7 with either the queen or the king, and if king d8, we simply take the queen, checkmate, game over. So now black played a surprisingly resourceful move with king f8. I mean, black is still losing here, but I like the resilience with king f8. Idea being, yes, we could take the queen with the rook or with our queen on g4, but now there's a back rank mate, so we can't take the queen. So Wilhelm Steinitz continued with the move rook f7, again attacking the king. If the king goes back to e8, we have a checkmate in 1, and if the queen takes the rook, we yet again have this rook take c8 idea. We're going to be up a ton of material. So then we see king g8 from black, and again rook g7 check. Amazing play from white. The queen can't take the rook because, again, rook takes c8, and if king takes g7, we take the queen with check, so we don't lose from a back rank mate. And king h8 was played. But what about the move king f8? What does white do here? Well, then we'd simply have knight h7 check. If king e8, we take the queen off, game over. And if king takes g7, we play queen takes d7 with check, continue with rook takes e8, and here we have a completely winning endgame. So king f8 doesn't work because of knight h7 check. So we see the move king h8, in which Steinitz continues with queen h4 check, forcing king takes g7, and now we have a forced mate in 8 as white plays queen h7 check, followed by queen h8 check. These are all forced moves, and after king e7, queen g7 check. Now black does have a few options, but if king d6, we're simply going to take that pawn off the board, and after queen e6, take the queen. We have a 1 game. So black, trying to hang on, played king e8, but here we see queen g8 followed by queen f7, the queen just slowly slithering in to the black camp. And after king d8, we have queen f8 check, and following queen e8, knight f7 check, followed by queen d6 checkmate. That was game. An amazing game by Steinitz, and I'm really happy that the Chess Geek sent me this one. And now, guys, the third and final portion of our unpacking of the Chess Geek's mystery box, his favorite chess opening trap. And it all starts off against d4 with black playing the crazy-looking move e5, offering up a pawn, and then playing bishop c5, and following that f3, going with d6. What on earth is black doing right now? I've actually seen this played multiple times by the famous chess YouTuber Eric Rosen, and here what he does is he pre-moves with knight e7 online. Now again, in person this doesn't work, but online it totally does. He pre-moves with knight e7 so that when white takes the pawn on d6, knight e7 comes into play within the millisecond, and then white's like, oh, well now we can just take the knight, and after d takes e7, we play the shocking move bishop takes f2, distracting the king on e1 from the queen. And after king takes f2, we simply take the queen on d1. This trap doesn't have an official name, but I would love to call it the Eric Rosen trap. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this video of us unpacking the Chess Geek's mystery box. Again, amazing channel from the kid. I really love what he's trying to do out here. Make sure to go down to the description below and subscribe to his channel. As always, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.